There are people who think of Johnny as a clown and a buffoon, but I do not. I despise John Iceland and everything that Icelandism has come to stand for. I think if John Iceland were a paid Soviet agent, he could not do more to harm this country than he's doing now.
You're listening to League Podcast, the League Do-Over, the Manchurian Candidate, 1962. I'm Matt Durson.
I'm John Hunt, and to my left is the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life, Clay and Fatso, whatever you called yourself earlier.
Old Hazel Eyes over here, Clay and Fatso.
Oh, no. That was an off-air joke. It's all nobody's fat.
Just getting it out of the way now.
Especially Clay. But yeah, so we did our Thomas Crown affair a couple months ago where we compared and contrasted.
Yes.
The two versions. Now we're going to go with the Manchurian Candidate, the 1962 version. And then next episode, we will do the 2004 Denzel Washington version of the Manchurian Candidate, which I have not seen, and I had not seen this. So
and contrast.
I haven't seen it, and I haven't contrasted it.
Yep, but I will compare and contrast once I do see them both. I feel like there will be a lot of contrast, actually. I don't know.
Yeah, I watched like the trailer for the remake, and I was like, this doesn't seem like it's anything like the original, so it'll be interesting.
Well, we will get there, but one interesting thing is that the Manchurian Candidate in the Denzel one is Manchurian is like the name of a company that he works for.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well,
the Manchurian Candidate was actually a novel, 1959 novel written by Richard Condon. And it was published in 1959, but their film rights were already, even before it hit the shelf, the film rights were already being sought after. George Axelrod and John Frankenheimer got the rights. And once they got Sinatra on board, apparently that was it. Like they were able, the movie just fast tracked because people were like, oh, Sinatra.
Sinatra was, this is like the height of his popularity, I would say. He had won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in From Here to Eternity, and that just like reignited his career. And then after that, there was just no stopping him.
I literally put into Google yesterday, was Frank Sinatra considered a good actor? Because genuinely, I think that he's a good actor in this movie. Like I think
he's excellent. He's excellent in this movie.
Really good.
I've seen a couple other of his films, and he's great in all of them that I've seen. I mean, a couple of his films.
Everyone is great in this movie. Like I think everybody does their part so well. Because usually back in 1962, everybody was kind of playing to the cheap seats, like
there was still. This is sort of on that. It's on like the threshold of new Hollywood and old Hollywood kind of thing, where there are a couple times where you're like, oh, that's kind of acting-ish, like acting talent, like where there's the African-American guy who wakes up in the bed next to his wife and he's like, yeah, maybe I'll write to this guy. And that seemed a little like, well, that's kind of really over the top for me. But overall.
Well, the main players, I guess we'll say.
Yeah.
I will also say, so this movie had a $2.2 million budget and $1 million went to Frank Sinatra. So maybe he was just happy. That's amazing. He's like, woo! Knocked the socks off of everybody.
But also, Sinatra was a producer on the film.
Yeah, he was also a producer.
So some of that was for acting. Yeah, some of it was producing. Lawrence Harvey, who played Shaw, got $200,000. So that really only left about $1 million for everything else. But still, it didn't need a huge budget. It's not like there were a lot of...
I mean, it's the only effects work in it are some rear screen things, rear screen projection. Other than that, it's a lot of talking heads.
And maybe if you have to rent out the garden for a couple of days of shooting and stuff, it's like maybe they gave him a deal. You know what I mean? Now they would like really screw you on something like that, but maybe back then they were like, let us come in and shoot a movie. They were probably like, okay. you know, not that it was free, but just like they probably didn't have to pay much.
Yeah, probably now they have to pay the leaving town tax. Do you remember that on The Simpsons where they were like they just tax the hell out of them?
Like a Massachusetts.
So anyway, the interesting thing though about like the time of like when this came out and when the book came out as well, like is brainwashing was a thing. It was like a real fear, and countries were actually trying to do it.
The U.S. government had like actual programs dedicated to that.
Yeah, it's program called MK ULTRA.
Yeah, I know a little bit about MK ULTRA, which is what they basically like dosed people with LSD and other psychoactive drugs.
Yeah, like shock therapy kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And they said some people even forgot how to go to the bathroom. Like they forgot toilet training because they were so zonked out after like weeks of this messed up stuff. So this is based on some facts, not exactly, but yeah, people were trying to figure out how, like the best way to get an assassin, you know. So we got the Manchurian Candidate. Any other knowledge drops or anything before we get right into the plot here?
Well, it's not a knowledge drop, but it's sort of coincidental. Is that Bulova Watches, which used to sponsor Frank Sinatra's TV show in the 50s, put out Frank Sinatra style watches, and I bought one, and it arrived today. So how about that? Yeah,
that's very cool.
Very cool.
How about that?
Cool. Yeah.
Why don't you play a game of solitaire, John? Now that you've got your watch.
Maybe it does. Remember, wasn't it Naked Gun where like the watch was like the thing that sort of hypnotized the killer? Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen that. But maybe it'll happen in the remake with Liam Neeson.
They're doing another Manchurian Candidate, or are you just making?
No.
You mean the Naked Gun?
Yeah.
All right, so we start off in like an army base. The truck pulls up. The driver.
Oh, it's like a brothel.
Yeah, it's not really an army, but an army truck pulls up. Sorry, yeah. The other guy sort of just shakes his head.
Radar's getting a grape knee high.
Yeah, right. And he's kind of like, oh, geez. So this guy goes in, and his name is Raymond Shaw, and he blows his whistle. He's like, everybody out. He's all mad, and all the troops are like, that old
old fuddy-duddy, can't get any. And then there's like a kid there that's like, well, he's not a kid, but he's their mascot, and he's like, well, maybe he's got a girl back home. He's the all-American boy.
Yeah. And they're like, this guy. All right, so then we switch back. They're in Korea. They're walking through some swamps. They're discussing some strategery. And they get like the interpreter guy is there telling them, you go around, and
it's going to be quicksand or something. And he's like, he didn't say anything about quicksand. And he's like, go single file. And then they're all jumped by Korean soldiers.
Yeah, so far as. So then they all get carried off. And then like the credits roll, and they're kind of funny.
They are kind of funny. But originally, I guess they had credits going on while they were getting captured. And during a test screening, he said that no one knew what was going on because of it. So we removed the credits and then did these sort of last minute. So that's why they're not great.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I mean, hey, it was a different time.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of, I thought this was a little strange. I'm not nitpicking here, but the beginning of the movie, I was kind of, when I'm not sure really where it's going, because I had no idea actually what happens in this movie, to be honest. I didn't read anything about it before I just clicked play, but there's this kind of weird voiceover that's saying like Raymond Shaw is getting the Medal of Honor.
Yes. That's Paul Frees, who does the voice of like Boris and Natasha on Moose and Squirrel.
How about that? There's a knowledge drop right
there. Yeah.
So now we meet Angela Lansbury, who, my God, this is crazy. I mean, we pretty much only know her as as what's her name from Murder, She Wrote?
Jessica Fletcher, right?
Jessica Fletcher, thank you.
And the teapot from
from Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Be our guest.
Yeah. So anyway, she's his mom, and she was only 3 years older.
That's like the
Lawrence
best.
Harvey.
That's like so funny to me. And apparently that happened to her in some other movie too, where she was playing someone's mother and she was not much older than them.
And she doesn't look like she looks like in Murder, She Wrote, but she does look like an older mom.
Yeah, she looks like she's about
old back then.
50. She looks like she's like
she does.
Easily 50. And she's like, what, 36 or something like that?
Wow.
Just, like,
I don't know.
all
how
that
old she is,
smoking
but
and drinking back then, I think. They weren't fat, but they looked older. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't take care of themselves necessarily. But anyway, so she arranged for this whole thing about him getting the Medal of Honor and like all, photographers and like big celebration. And then his stepdad, who she says, "Oh, your father." He's like, "He's not my father." This is James Gregory, and he's Senator
Iceland,
Johnny,
something like that.
Johnny Iceland, John Iceland. They call him Johnny throughout the whole movie, and he's just sort of this bumbling oaf that she's trying to like get elected. But anyway,
he's like a drunk
senator,
idiot, politician type guy that's kind of like using his power and influence and money to like kind of get his senatorship, because there's and contrast another senator that will be his foil later on in the movie, but yeah, this guy is like an idiot and a drunk, and he's always like partying.
Yeah,
he's essentially like a child. It seems like.
Yeah. And his wife there is always like, "Why don't you just take this drink and go sit down somewhere with it?"
Yeah, she's basically but she's
grown-ups
like,
handle it.
She's the puppet master behind the whole thing. But I do like the part. So they get in like a car, and Shaw, like Raymond Shaw, like he was supposed to be getting his Medal of Honor. He's all mad that this whole thing got arranged, and she's trying to convince him like, why are they doing it or whatever. And he just puts his fingers in his ears and he goes, "Stop it, stop it, stop it." So anyways, we get this whole sort of like why this sort of voiceover again about why he got it. Like, oh, he saved all his battalion and whatever. Like it turned out this Bennett Marco recommended him for the Medal of Honor, and that is Sinatra. So Shaw, he tells his mom, "I'm going to work for this newspaper. There's an opening," and she says, "That commie."
It's a communist.
Yeah, they're like on the plane to go back to Washington so he can get his Medal of Honor, and he's like, "Well, as soon as I get out of Washington."
Oh, he's like, "I'm not going to Washington. I'm going to New York
Like, I'm
instead."
going to New York. I got a job.
Like,
And
I don't know if he can really. It's not like an Uber. Like, can I add a stop to this private jet? It's like, no, I guess going to have to go to DC and then go to New York.
Yeah, he'll have to just turn right around, I guess. But they apparently this newspaper he's going to work where they don't write too many kind things about Johnny, that communist rag, whatever. So,
and the publisher's name is Gaines, which I remembered like being like the publisher of Mad Magazine.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
So meanwhile, Marco, he keeps having these nightmares.
This, I think, is one of the best scenes in the whole film, the nightmare scene here.
It's really weird. I mean,
but it's so well done.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, but like, because like they're in this room and they're talking about hydrangeas and everything. Like they're having like tea. And at first you're like, what the hell is going on here? They're in a room
with all these women, and there's a woman at a podium talking about hydrangeas, and then there's like a whole room full of women. And apparently the speech was done. They just copied all of this out of a seed catalog and just had her say that.
A seed catalog?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. All the soldiers are sitting around, and they're kind of, and then the guy says, "Pick the soldier that you dislike the least."
I guess we should say that they depending on the shot, it goes from the ladies to a bunch of the North Koreans, in a thing, and all the soldiers, the battalion, are sitting on chairs, looking rather bored and just not interested. Yeah. Like Sinatra sitting there yawning.
They're not interested in hydration.
And so whenever they speak to the soldiers, whenever they speak to the soldiers. Yeah, they're always like, "Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am." That kind of stuff. They're all very polite. It's like it's not like a big deal to them.
It's funny because like you're still trying to figure out what's going on. You're like, why do they keep calling this guy ma'am?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Iron Sheik says, like, kill one of them.
The Iron Sheik.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the bald guy with the mustache.
Yeah.
he's Dr. Yen Lo, and he's the guy who's doing all the hypnotizing, basically. And he says, just pick the soldier that you dislike the least. And that's the person that's going to recommend him for the medal. But then they're like, and what about someone you don't like? Or whatever. And he chokes the guy. He's like, here, take this scarf.
Well, they're like, don't use a gun. And then like a lady's like, use this instead, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy. And they're all just sitting there watching him kill this guy. And then Marco wakes up screaming.
Yeah.
It's like, I had this dream.
Also important to note, like, just for context, if people haven't seen the movie, like Lo, the gentleman starring in the dream, the supposed dream, but that's actually the reality, is like standing in front of communist leaders. So it's like picture Lenin and I don't know if it's Mao, but
Mao.
But that it's the Russians and the Chinese communist leaders that are essentially leading this. And this is the scene where they use the term brainwash, and saying like they have been brainwashed and they think they're in a garden club with the ladies. And so that's an important part.
Right. I'm probably not doing a good job at actually
it's basically
what's going on.
It's like the scene is cutting between what they think they're seeing and what is actually happening. And it's like one of the very first shots is like it's like a 360 pan where it starts off at the lady and then you see the audience, the communist, and then it comes back and it's the dude. And apparently they had the set on like a track so that when the camera got out of view of the podium, like they just kind of rolled in another part of the set right as they were doing that. That's pretty cool. I like the old school kind of stuff. Yeah.
Pretty brilliant dream sequence thing.
Yeah, and if this is one of those movies where you're kind of like looking at your phone and half watching or something, like you're probably like,
you're gonna miss a lot. Yeah,
here?
Yeah. Like the first 20 minutes of this movie are a real classic, iconic opening of a movie. And you're really gonna pay attention, and it's really awesome.
Is it this scene or the next time they go back to the dream where you can see Raymond looking like he's doing something with his hands with cards? Is that the next time?
I think it's the next one.
All right, well,
I don't remember.
Disregard.
What's he doing with his hands?
He's looked like he's dealing, right? That's the looks like he's dealing. Yeah, dealing salts. Anyways, so Marco, he's talking to. He's like, I have this dream that Shaw killed the guy, and they're like, no, he's the warmest, nicest. It's like a trigger reaction every time someone mentions him. They have to say the same thing. He's the warmest, kindest person I know. So anyways, Marco is all stressed out, and so they reassign him to public relations.
Which is exactly where you want to put a guy who's all stressed out, right?
He's actually less stressful.
Less stressful than combat, I guess.
Yeah. So anyways, Johnny is, they're having this big hearing or whatever. And I think he actually says, I have a question. And it made me think of Mystery Science. The Mystery Science Theater thing that we always quote. Yeah.
Samson versus the vampire women. That's what it's
I
from.
have more of a comment. Do you remember when you were like, you said a singer before you were an actor? That was awesome.
Is that what people said to Billy D?
Remember when you were a singer before you were an actor?
Yeah. That's what they said to Frank.
Anyway, awesome. So he's calling out all the commies.
This part was all ad lib too. Apparently, it wasn't scripted.
Really?
Yeah, and when I was listening to the commentary track, to hear about the characters, and
nice.
and John Frankenheimer was like, he's like, this is all ad lib. I don't know where he was pulling this stuff from, but they got it. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I want to say something about the cinematography of this scene, which I will delve into a bit. Not being a filmmaker myself, but somebody that enjoys a film. I do like how they have, it's a simple setup where they are showing like the monitors of the TVs.
Yeah.
Like, actually the broadcast of the speech and the senators behind him making those accusations. But there's actually a couple TVs and you can see or there's a couple cameras and they kind of switch around. You can see the whole room a couple times and it just looks pretty badass.
No, it's really well done. Yeah, like that scene in particular. And I do like, Sinatra has a great line here where he says, "You shouldn't talk to our son that way, even if he is an idiot."
Yeah, he's like, I may be new to the job, but don't do that.
Yeah. But anyway, so they throw Johnny out, and he's like, "There are 104 commies in the Defense Department." And then as they're taking him out, he says, "There's 275 communists in the Defense Department," which is kind of funny because later on they're like, "I need a number." You know, give me a real number. He
mentions like 3 different numbers because the press is like, "Wait, what number did you say? What? How many numbers?
Yeah.
How many?"
And he keeps changing it. So, anyways, Marco Sinatra, he's very suspicious. Something's going on, and he's suspicious about his nightmares and all that. And
you can call him Ben.
Yeah, I guess his name is Ben. I don't know. You're right, Ben, Frank, whatever. Chairman,
Old blue eyes.
Old blue eyes. So then we have another soldier who has a nightmare, and this is the it was actually because they say kill another guy, and he actually gives him the pistol. Ben gives him the pistol to shoot the guy,
and it's the kid that I was talking about, the mascot, the young guy, who's actually not old enough to serve. He's like Bucky Barnes.
Yeah, he just sits there and smiles at him too.
Yeah, and this is the part that where me and Mrs. Elder were like, "Holy crap!" Because he shoots him point blank in the head, and they show it. Like they show the chair, like the getting blown back from the shot, and then the blood on the wall.
That was pretty.
It was very effective and surprising.
1962 violence of that they would have shown that, and not just cut away.
Yeah,
with the gunshot or whatever. Very cool. I mean, not cool to shoot someone in the head, but very cool to film a face.
Yeah, it's a very striking.
Yeah. Ben decides to write a letter. He's going to write a letter to Raymond Shaw to see what's going on. They cut to Shaw reading the letter, and then he gets a call from Yen Lo, the Iron Sheik. He says, "Why don't you relax and play some solitaire?" Every time he's playing, when the Queen of Diamonds comes up, it's like, boom. That's like the trigger card. Or whatever.
Yeah, that's the trigger card. The Red Queen, who is one of the aliases of my beloved wife, who's not my wife, the Red Queen. I wonder why.
Yes, that's true.
That is. Why did she buy me a deck of cards? What to think about that?
This better be a little suspicious. Am I gonna get shot one of these days? Get that Dyson. So, anyways, he gets another call. They tell him where to go. Whatever. Next Saturday. But then there was this thing. So he was like run over. It was like a hit and run kind of thing.
Yeah, they say he's run over, and his boss at the newspaper gets the message and stuff like that.
So he's in the hospital. He's got his head all bandaged up, whatever. And Yen Lo shows up,
fakely bandaged up.
Right.
Like it's like just like a hat they put on him, essentially.
And he's like, "What about those guys you killed?" And he's like, and he's like, "No, they didn't. You didn't kill them." So that's what this is when we kind of find out what's like a little more of what's going on. He's like, "This is the best assassin. He hypnotized these people so they don't remember what they did."
Yeah, I think it's the doctor that did that planted the seed, so to speak.
Yeah.
Who was a Russian guy.
Yeah.
It's a Russian doctor. And the Russian doctor is actually running like a sort of a halfway house, like a sober house place for people. They used to do this a lot. The band, the Dropkick Murphys, got their name from this, like back in the 50s and 60s, before they had, not before AA, because AA came out like the 30s, but like if you wanted to get, now they have like well-run programs with doctors and detox and stuff like that. But what they used to do is basically like the Dropkick Murphys. There was a guy named Dropkick Murphy, and he would send somebody there that was a drunk, and he would like basically like lock you in a barn for like a month and then like kick you and beat you. And I'm not saying like he was like that abusive, but like they kind of like dried you out in like an old school like.
It's sort of like in Train Spotting, where he sees the baby on the ceiling, where He's going through withdrawals.
Yeah, it was like a little bit more like the train spotting detox than they would do now, more sophisticated. So the Russian guy, that I thought this was interesting, like the Russian doctor is like, this is like a place where we detox alcoholics. This is what we do here. It's because it's a good cover for having Shaw in there with his all beat up and everything.
Well, I like the conversation they have where they're like, well, we need him to make sure that all the stuff is still there. It's been 2 years. We got to have him kill someone. And he's like, how about one of the staff here? And he's like, I would gladly give you one of the staff, but we're short staffed as it is. You got to be someone else. I'd be happy to offer up one of them.
Yeah. So they do have him kill.
Yeah. He's like, this is actually the first, Russian, outclave in the United States to actually ever turn a profit. And then the Chinese communist guy is like, I think it's Low is like, you better be careful because capitalism is a pretty dangerous thing. And the Russian guy's like, oh, like what? He's like, my fine doctor, you must allow a little humor into your brainwashing schemes. I just
and then he's like, I got to leave and go to Macy's because my wife is giving me a shopping list.
Yeah, he's got to go to Macy's. I also like the line where he says, like, the reason it's good to hypnotize your killers is because they don't feel any, the uniquely American emotion, guilt.
Yeah.
I'm like, uniquely American. Yeah, I don't think that's true anymore.
No.
But that was the 60s. But anyway, so, and he has another great line where he says, the memory has been not so much white, it's been dry cleaned.
Yeah.
I thought that was a funny line. Yeah. And then he goes, maniacal laugh.
Maniacal laugh.
Oh. So anyway, they send him, on a test kill. And he ends up killing his boss.
He goes to his boss, who's like, my favorite part is when he's like, oh, what are you doing here? Pay no attention to this silky, frilly robe. It was my wife's. It keeps me warm.
Yeah.
It's like,
he just walks into his boss's bedroom at 4 a.m. and the guy isn't like, what the hell are you doing here? Get out. Yeah. That was a little.
But also, like, they're like, first of all, the boss is awake, but I was like, oh, I guess I'm not the only one that's like still doing up at 4, like being a fucking weirdo. He's got his wife's like bathrobe on, but it's like it's very feminine. It has like fur on it and everything. And he's like, it was my wife's. Well, she passed a few years ago, but the warmest thing I own.
Yeah. But it was funny that so Shaw says, they told me you'd be asleep. And he's like, they? And then it just kind of goes to black. And then, we know what happened. I mean, we know what happened, but
they made love.
They don't show it.
Passionate love all night.
It's like, that robe is so sexy. It's turning me on.
Let me try that robe on. You know what that, he's like, you know what that robe would look really good on? The floor.
Hey, oh.
Wrapped around your neck.
Then he goes over and feels it. He's like, what is this material? And then he's like, boyfriend material? Hey.
Oh, that's a good one. I don't think I've heard that one. Or used it. No, just kidding.
Well, don't use it. You'll get slapped, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not.
He calls that thing a bed jacket, which is, I guess you could just maybe call it a bathrobe. But
yeah.
Okay. I like that bed. It's a different,
bed jacket.
Bed jacket. All right, so next we get the Colonel. He goes to see Ben. And he's got all these books and stuff around, but basically,
I love the fact he's like, do you read all these things? He's like, I've got an interest, and just lists off like 20 titles that are none of them are related whatsoever.
Yeah,
he says he has a guy that goes to probably City of Lights books in San Francisco, a famous bookstore. He's like, I got a guy in San Francisco. He sends them to me, and I just tell him, send me whatever. So he just like. Yeah. No matter where I'm stationed, I get books shipped to me.
Yeah, it's cool. But he says, basically the Colonel's there to tell him he's messed up. He's a disaster because he says he's not getting any sleep. And he's like, what's the deal? He's like, well, Shaw was always kind of a dick.
Yeah, he's like, I remember what I said to you. He was the kindest, warmest, most wonderful person. But he's unlikable. You just can't like this guy.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I like him for some reason. But in the back of my head, I don't. So he knows something is wrong.
Something's messed up.
All this is over a couple of scotch and waters, which is a popular like drink in old movies. It's like, get some scotch. Scotch and water? I don't drink anymore.
I remember when I started drinking scotch, like when I remember reading like, oh, water will bring out the flavors. I'm like, oh, water. But it does bring out flavors. But I don't know. I feel like it just dilutes it.
He goes in the can and gets some nice New York water from the tap.
Yeah, he does. I know, right from the bathroom sink. I mean, it's a small apartment, I guess, but I was like, ugh. Anyway, so he wants to put him on sick leave because, like you're fucking up everything. And he's like, no, I'm fine, but no. So next, Ben is on the train and he's all fucked up.
He's sweaty as hell. Yeah. There's a lot of sweaty dudes in this movie.
Did anyone else think that Colonel kind of was? I was like, is that Bob Hope? He kind of looks like Bob Hope. It would have been awesome to have Bob Hope and Frank Sinatra in like a classic movie like this.
That would have been something.
Yeah.
He goes to light his cigarette. He can't do it. It drops it in his drink.
Yeah.
And there's a woman sitting across from him, just like staring at him with like, what the fuck is with this guy?
Well, not just any woman.
No, the woman from Psycho.
A woman. Yeah. Janet Leigh.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Well.
Not really a train fight, but just like North by Northwest, we've got a nice little train scene.
It's like this is a very weird scene.
Yeah, the music gets really loud at one point.
Yeah, it does. It's like when
reason.
Yeah. It's when he leaves the room.
Yeah, he storms off.
Because he's like, I'm fucked up. Yeah. I gotta leave. I'm embarrassing myself. And then he goes, and then she walks, like they're in like the in-between section of the trains. And she walks in and it stops. And she lights a cigarette.
She lights a cigarette
for herself and then gives it to him.
Yeah.
I was wondering too, like, I just seen this movie like within the last like year or so. And I was like, oh, is she part of the PSYOP?
Well, that's how it comes off.
She has not much of a role in here at all, to be honest.
It's kind of it's like if you were flirting, but he was still having the dream or something. It's so weird because it sounds like she's giving him information that he'll need later. That's like she's his handler, but
her name is like Eugenia or something.
Yeah, her
like
name is Eugenie. You can call her Jenny, but her friends call her Rosie. Like I don't know, and like something about
you can
Arabic
call me Ray,
or something.
Or you can call me Ray J.
And like I don't know, is Arabic some sort of weird?
I don't know. I've watched someone that analyzed this whole scene and he was like, I don't understand it either, but it's really cool. It's weird.
It is really cool. And, they're great. But yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
She gives him her name, her number, and where she lives. And she keeps asking, she keeps repeating it and then asking if he'll remember. And he's just like, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. She says, this is where I live and this is my phone number. And he says he's going to New York to visit the newspaper guy who we know is dead, but he doesn't. But
no, he's going to visit. He's going to visit Raymond, who's not dead. You're right.
The scene just kind of ends weirdly. I thought that it just kind of cuts. Like there's no, I don't know. Whatever. It's a good introduction to Janet Leigh. So there we go. So anyway, he's going to see Shaw. And speaking of Shaw, he's. And his secretary comes in and she says, there's an Oriental man out to see you. And I'm like, oh, that's, you don't say that anymore. Anyway.
Well, the other thing that in the last scene where they're on the train, she's like, I was one of the Chinamen that helped build this line or lay down the tracks. Like, ooh, I don't know if you'd say that one nowadays either.
Yeah, but that was kind of like, racial obscurities aside from old times. but like, I was like, that's why I was like, is this part of the PSYOP? Because of that line.
Anyway, the guy who is there to see him, the quote unquote Oriental man, is Chunjin. Sorry. Yeah. Chunjin. He was there earlier. He was at the beginning. And he's like, he's here for a job. He's like, well, I don't really need it, but he's going to be the valet. He's like, he says, I suppose I do need a valet. Yes. Oh, a valet.
Very British, also even though he's supposed to be American.
Yeah.
What was the British thing from Return of the Sith? Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Sith.
Oh, speciality.
Speciality, yeah.
Speciality, yeah. Valet is, as a fan, you'll notice when we're on the microphone and you can hear it, the Downton Abbey theme song comes up on my phone.
There you go.
Calls, they would say valet.
Well, I think a valet isn't someone that. Well, I wanted to point something out that we back at the part where he was getting, all the reporters, where he was at the airfield, and there's like an army general that greets him. It's the same guy from King Kong versus Godzilla that I said reminded me of your grandfather. I forgot to point that out. It's very, very brief, but it is him. So I was just looking through the cast.
I'm glad you went back there for that.
Hey, it needed to be done.
Yeah, it's very important. So anyways, go back and listen to our King Kong versus Godzilla episode.
I don't think that Henry Silva was a Asian.
He's Italian.
Yeah, he's an Italian guy.
In another Sinatra movie, he plays a Native American, so he was just sort of like the catch-all for every race.
Yeah, yeah, he's the he's like kind of an entourage Rat Pack guy.
Yeah, he is.
Anyways, so Marco shows up and he sees him there and he decks him. He sees Chun-Jin and he punches him right in the face.
This is one of the first karate, put that in air quotes, fights on film. And Sinatra broke his finger. Fight. He broke his finger during this.
Like hit it on a table or something. Like not even, whatever.
Because Henry Silva was left-handed, but they were supposed to be fighting right-handed or something, and he just kept messing it up. Something like that.
It caused him a lifetime of discomfort, old Blue Eyes, after that. Oh. And they kind of had like a breakaway table that I was thinking like if that was a real table, it probably would be like solid and you wouldn't be able to break through it. Yeah. And he's kind of doing like, even Sinatra's kind of like doing like he has his hands out in blades, but in a really awkward way. Like if you were even going to fake karate fight someone, you would kind of square up like you were in Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or something, but he's kind of like, he's like, I'm the first to do this in a movie. I'm going to kind of combat your thing with my thing, karate style.
So yeah, he's screaming at him like, what were you doing here? What were you doing there? Whatever. And a cop comes and tries to pull him off and he just elbows the cop, just like right back, the guy behind him and he just throws his elbow back. And so he gets arrested. But fortunately, he remembered Janet Leigh's phone number, which she gave him like 5 times. So she gets his one phone call and she comes and gets him out. So they're in the back of the cab and she tells her like his life story. Her life story. Oh, I said I wasn't married, but I had a fiance, but I dumped him.
Like, for you. After I met you on the train. Sweaty, weird, broken man.
Yeah, I know. Jeez,
yeah, she's like, I gave him the last kiss I'll ever give him, and all that.
On the balls.
I just left.
Sorry,
bye, bitch. The phone number Eldorado 20299 was the 5551212 of the time, like the fake phone
60s?
number that they give out. Yeah,
right.
And because it's always like call Eldorado London 356 or whatever, and it wasn't in use for a long time, and now you could actually call that number and potentially somebody might pick up because they kind of let it slide.
Lapse. Oh, that's funny. Let's do it. Right. But anyway, so they kiss in the back seat of that cab.
Imagine how smoky all those kisses are in these old movies. I used for years, I just dated smokers because it was still the thing, when I was in college, and I was just like, oh God, have some gum first. Now let's kiss. It is like kissing an ashtray. It's terrible.
Yeah, that's what they say, right?
I mean, I'm assuming I've never kissed an ashtray yet.
He goes to see Shaw again after that. He was going to see him in the first place, but Shaw knows about the nightmares and whatever. And he said, oh, I got a letter from this corporal who's my best friend. But he said something, he's a complete boob or something.
Yeah, he's Shaw is basically like, everybody hated me. Why would he say I was his best friend? They hated me almost as much as I hated them, kind of thing.
Yeah. And he goes He's going to go to Washington. He has all the officers say the same thing. Like I said, the kindest, warmest, blah, 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 blah. And then, I don't know, there's this kind of weird scene on Christmas Eve where they're just drinking, and Shaw is just like, he tells a story about meeting this woman years ago named Jocelyn Jordan, the daughter of Senator Jordan. And he had, he got bitten by a snake and she saved him. And like, she took off her shirt to wrap his, wound.
I mean, she had a bra on underneath. I mean,
yeah, I mean, she wasn't. She is a delightful woman, by the way.
Oh, she's very pretty.
Very pretty. Leslie Parrish was the actress's name. She's a delightful person, is very happy, and yes, he fell in love with her.
And this is to give him some humanity, because you realize the reason he's an asshole is because of this, and his mother is just a monster.
Well, yeah, because what happened was she's
the daughter of the senator, right, that Angela Lansbury and
he sued her actually.
Yeah, for defamation of character or whatever it was.
Yeah, all these rich senators have like, maybe it's like Lake Como or something. They have like lake houses, and the lake houses are like across from each other, and that's how Shaw meets. Is it Jocelyn?
Jocelyn.
Josie.
Yeah, he calls her Josie a lot. Yeah,
and he's like, "Oh, I had to sue her, for defamation, basically, because she kept calling me a communist and all that." So, yeah, like he's like, "I really hate that Iceland, that husband of hers." He's kind of like, "Yeah, I don't like that guy either."
I know, and when he asks,
they like bond over their hatred of his parents.
And he says, "I'd like to marry your daughter," and the guy's like, "Oh, they're
nice
all
one."
Very happy. Yeah,
they all laugh.
I also want to point out, when he's telling this story and they show him like hanging out and eating, there's a shot that shows him like telling a joke, laughing, going to eat something, and then the film reverses for some reason. So he goes to eat and then basically takes it out of his mouth, puts it back on the plate. It is so weird.
I was gonna say that too. That's like that's like in Star Wars, right? Like the Jawas, not the Jawas.
Oh,
the Tusken Raiders.
Yeah,
where
Sand people.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I guess they needed a few more frames of them laughing. So he's like,
I was wondering if it was intentional, maybe if like they were like, well, it's him telling the story and he's kind of fucked up, so like maybe he's going, wait a minute, let me go back for a second. Nah, I don't know.
Yeah, I was
trying to
just
no prize here.
Like, no, I get the no prize, and I was thinking, I was like, oh, they probably didn't think anyone would notice that, but we sure did.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, it took me three views to catch it, so.
Oh, I didn't even notice. So anyway, Angela Lansbury does not go for this marriage. In fact, she says, "That communist tart." That was funny. Tart always makes me laugh. But everyone is literally a communist. It's like to Angela Lansbury's.
Yeah, just like everyone now is an immigrant or something.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say about that.
That's say no more.
Do you notice how fat her dad is?
What?
Do you notice how fat her dad is? After he cures his snake bite.
He reminds me of Dick Van Patten.
Yeah, he's like sitting on his he's sitting there having a drink right before he like asks her to marry her, and
he's also got like a weird little, like, he should be like Ricola with that little hat he's got on and stuff, you should have those like lederhosen and stuff on.
Anyway, yeah, so Angela Lansbury wrote a letter dumping Jocelyn for her son, and he's telling the story. He's like, but I signed it. Like, that's just, it's like, wow. Like he was really like, oh, I loved her. She was so great. And wow, yeah.
Well, in the book, apparently, there's a much more incestuous relationship with Angela Lansbury's character. So
yeah.
They only kind of hint upon it in this, like,
right.
But anyway.
When he's with Josie, though, he's like, the days were lovable, the nights were lovable.
Yeah, and he's like, and I was lovable. Can you believe I was lovable? Yeah, I was actually lovable. Because he
used the word lovable many times.
Yeah, he's just so stoic now that he can't come up with any other words.
But he's a little bit.
He used to be lovable.
Yeah, he's a little loosened up with hanging out with Ben on Christmas Eve. Like
he's crying and shit.
Bottles of champagne, and
Frank was probably drinking for real. That guy, he never stopped.
But anyway, the next scene, Shaw goes into a bar and he asks for a deck of cards once he gets to the Queen of Diamonds.
Well, what happens is the bartender is talking about to two patrons about someone he knew that like lost all their money gambling, and they're like, don't play poker, why don't you do something like play solitaire? And that's when he's like, hand me those cards. So right. Ben walks in, and as soon as he gets, like, Shaw walks right out. Well, and someone also says something. What? Did they all say something about go jump in a lake or something? So he's under the the programming now. So
because Queen of Diamonds came up. So he goes to this lake. And he just kind of walks right into it.
Yeah,
Marco,
he hops in a cab, and then when Ben shows up, he pays for their beers, and he's like, "What? Where'd you go?" He runs out, and he like does the follow that cab thing with another cab, and then the scene where when he's like walking down the stairs, and then like that's like a famous, like, I don't know if it's part of Central Park, but I always see that in movie and TV shows. They always shoot there.
I was just going to say, on the day that they shot, they said it was like one of the coldest days that New York had in like 30 years. And they had to use like earth diggers and shit to break up the ice because it was so thick. And so he's like, he was like, run. It's 5 degrees out, and he's just running. He just does it. Just goes right into the fucking water for real.
I thought it was funny. There were all those like rowboats too, and he's like climbing through them. I was like, well, those people, I guess they're kind of like the swan boats or something. Like you rent them to row on the Hudson River or something. Gross. Ugh.
Yeah, I know. So Marco pulls him out, and he doesn't even remember. Like, what he's like,
what the fuck are you doing, man? He's like, I don't know. I don't remember doing that. These are all like, now they're standing in front of like back screen projection, and Mrs. Elder is like, why did they do that? Why did they just? I was like, because he just jumped into a cold river. They probably were like, get him out, warm him up. We'll film the rest of the scene later on on the studio.
Yeah, we don't have to. We'll just we'll figure it out in post.
Yeah.
But anyway, so now this like he playing solitaire with like a shrink, right? Is that?
Sinatra is.
Yeah, Sinatra.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was losing track.
That guy's another guy in military intelligence. He may or may not be a shrink, but he was also in the other scenes, like in uniform.
I think he's a military shrink because I think he was talking with Sinatra about mental health stuff. I can't remember exactly.
Well, it's weird because like this on IMDb it says this guy is played by someone named Joe Adams, and it says uncredited. I'm like, wow, okay, that's interesting. This guy just did the movie, I guess. So whatever. Anyways,
it says also on the Amazon thing that Joe Adams was the first black actor cast in a part that wasn't specified as a black character.
Oh, well, good for him.
Very cool. I also thought, I was like, that guy's like a handsome man. Like he kind of looks like Martin Luther King Jr.
So anyways, Mark, this kind of jogs his memory. He remembers everything now. He's like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, he's like, a dream all makes sense now.
He wasn't crazy. Meanwhile, so this is a kind of I think so. Angela Lansbury, now she's like, I've been thinking, I think you should marry that girl. And he's like, what? Like, that communist tart. He's like, no, it'll be good.
Yeah, she's a regular tart now. She's a pop tart. Right. Sorry.
Yeah. And so she's like, I'm going to have a ball. We're going to have a costume ball for her because she's coming home, and I want you to go and, reconnect.
This is after her revealing this plan to her husband, the Senator Iceland, who's getting shaved up and getting makeup, and he's like, a little bit under the chin here, got a little doubly, triple chin from all the scotch and waters.
Maybe. So they cut to this ball, and there's this gross, I don't know if it's a pate or something, but it's like a flag. Oh, it's so weird looking.
It's like ruined, where he's like, just.
Yeah, he just like scrapes it off the top.
I would like to point out a few things here. The costumes in particular, which I think might have a little symbolism. I'm not entirely sure, but spoiler for the ending. Is it okay for me to spoil the ending?
Yeah, I mean, it's a 50-something-year-old movie. So.
It's a 60-something-year-old movie.
60-something, you're right. My God.
He's Abraham Lincoln, who gets assassinated. Angela Lansbury's Little Bo Peep, who is like a shepherd herder, and she is leading him around. And and Raymond is dressed as Woody from Toy Story. I got nothing on that one, but
I was just going to ask about him. But Woody from Toy Story is a good one. He's a cowboy, and it looks exactly So he's all nervous because he's going to see Jocelyn again, and she tells him, "Go get yourself a drink or tranquilizer," which I thought was a funny thing to say. So they go get a drink, and then she says, "Why don't you play some solitaire?" Boom. So then
that's probably exactly the noise they use in the remake.
Yeah, right. So it's got to be more on the nose. So yeah. So anyway, Jocelyn watches him from the outside, and she walks in, and she's got a Queen of Diamonds like costume on.
Yeah, that was lucky for him.
Yeah,
because Angela Lansbury took the Queen card and left him in a room.
Yeah. So yes, they reunite, they kiss. It's a nice moment.
There's also an important scene before all this where Angela Lansbury shuffles off her drunk husband who's doing the luau. Is that what it's called?
Limbo.
Doing the limbo underneath her Little Bo Peep cane. And she's like, "Okay, you are definitely too drunk. Why don't you go let the adults take this?"
And he's like, but my beard is in the way.
Yeah. So he fucks off, and then her and Josie's father kind of have a conversation, and she's like, "What do you think about at the convention? You have a change of heart and endorse my husband for president." And he's like,
Vice president.
He's like, "I will spend every dollar I have and borrow money to stop that from happening." He's like, and she's like, "You're a communist," and he's like, "Fuck you," basically.
Actually, he says that guy would do more harm than a communist if he was actually, elected.
Yeah.
He would do more harm if he was a commie. So it's all very political, trade federations and, just kidding. It's not like Star Wars, but yeah.
Little Bo Peep.
But yeah, so she storms off and she goes back to see, and the Queen of Diamonds costume is laying there, and Shaw and Josie are gone.
He whipped that costume right off her.
Yeah, I wonder what she was wearing underneath.
What's she wearing now?
Just a brassiere.
Her ass was wiggling too.
I was thinking it was funny too. Well, two things. One thing is, I think he does say, "No, I will vote no confidence," which does relate to Star Wars. I will vote no confidence about that. But also, like, when she's like, "Oh God, you got a snake bite. I'm going to run home and tell Daddy, and I'm going to go get the car. I'll be back in a minute." And she rides on her bike with like no shoes on, which probably sucks, but she rides her bike home and is like, I wonder if she ran into her room to put her shirt on, or was like, "Daddy, my boyfriend got bit by a snake. Like, where is your shirt?" You know what I mean?
Bit by a trouser snake? What are you doing? Put your clothes back on, you communist tart.
She is a tart, maybe an American, not communist.
Put this Queen of Diamonds on you. Cover up.
So anyways, we cut to Ben and Eugenie. They're just hanging out. And he says, "Hey, pick a card." And she picks the Queen of Diamonds. And he's like, he guesses it because they're all Queen of Diamonds. It's a trick deck.
Yeah, they called it a force deck, which I'd never heard before. I've heard stack deck.
Yeah, I never heard that either.
Thing. But he's like, for magicians and, trickeries.
He's like, "Let's get married."
Yeah. I got a big meeting with Shaw tomorrow, but let's get married. He's like, all right, whatever. I mean,
he's trying this hypnotizing thing right there with all the cards.
Why don't you play some solitaire?
I always wonder when they mention marriage, like also like in North by Northwest, it's like, well, let's get married. It's kind of like, is that code word for like, let's fuck?
Yes, do the nasty.
Good, which we can only do when we're married, obviously. So let's get married.
Right. Obviously. Speaking of, Shaw and Jocelyn, they got married. and he's all happy, and he makes like a joke. I forget even what the joke was.
Well, what it is,
I made a joke.
Is that Marco goes to his place and they come in and they're all happy. So that's kind of an important detail too.
I know the joke. He says, "And here I am, dressed up
Groucho
like
Marx.
Gaucho." I think he says Gaucho Marx.
Yeah.
It sounds like he says Gaucho Marx.
I think that's
really
what
funny.
he's saying because and he's like, "Listen, I made a joke. Do you ever remember me making a joke before?
It wasn't a very good joke.
Yeah. No,
But it was a joke.
I
A
made
joke nonetheless." The subtitles say Groucho, but I think he says Gaucho.
Yeah, I watched that with subtitles too because it did sound like Gaucho, but I couldn't tell if that was just the weird accent he's kind of putting on. But anyways, so yeah, Marco is there and he's telling Jocelyn like what's going on. He's like, Shaw, he's sick, and
she's like, "No, he's fine. Don't worry about it. I'll make him better. We just got married. See how happy he is."
And he's like, "All right, I'll give you 48 hours." Because she said, "I'll make him well." And then in the next scene, they're in bed. What a scandalous thing that is. They're sharing a bed together. And maybe that's how she's going to make him well. She's going to fuck him into
good mental health.
I'm going to fuck that brainwashing right out of him.
They are married, so.
Yes. No, so I know. It's fine. It's not that scandalous, but yeah, they had to be married, I guess, because they couldn't just have sex without being married.
And then when they're having breakfast the next day, she comes in, turns the TV on, and he goes, "There are two kinds of people in the world. One is the kind of person that enters a room and turns the TV on. The other person is the person that enters the room and turns it off."
He sounds more crazy now that he's happy.
Find each other. Yeah.
It sounds like it's very
bipolar. Literally.
Yeah. Meanwhile, though, on the TV, Johnny is charging her dad with high treason. So Shaw's all pissed. He goes to see his mom, and she breaks out a deck of cards. And she's like, "Okay, got something for you." So he goes to see her dad. He's drinking a quart of milk, and he shoots him right through the milk.
That's a great shot, too.
Yeah.
He's like,
I'm making light of it.
What are you doing there? Is that he's like, "It's a pistol, sir." He's like, "What is this?" "That's a silencer."
He's like, "What are you doing?"
And you're pulling the trigger?
Yes, I'm pulling the triggers. And then the most heartbreaking part comes.
I know. We're having a laugh, but my God, Josie
comes down. She's like, "What the hell?" And then he just turns and shoots her. And what is so powerful about the scene is it's so matter-of-factly done. It's not like a musical, like, it's not a close-up. She doesn't like overact and die. She says he's like, it's a long shot, and he just turns, shoots her, boom, she falls down, and then steps over her body to leave.
He shoots the dad a couple more times.
Yeah.
Well, because earlier they had said when you kill someone, you have to make sure you kill anyone else who saw you do it.
Yeah.
And so it's just part of his programming. Like it's just,
he walks out that front door and the tears are streaming down his face. Oh, it's so powerful. It's so
the framing of the shot, like dad is dead, stare with his eyes open, and to his daughter slain feet away from him, and then he slowly walks. It's like a classic like Citizen Kane or like Kurosawa filmmaking, like something really strong in the foreground, something in the midground, and then like as he walks out, like just perfectly framed, perfectly shot.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, it's so jarring, really, to watch it because you just if the movie was made today, it would be so overly dramatic.
Yeah,
I feel like it'd be like slow motion or something, and
it would be like a 10-minute fight scene in the kitchen, and the milk would like splatter into the camera, and like all the pots and pans would go flying everywhere, and like he would put up a struggle.
Right, but it's so much more powerful this way. It's like, yeah. So he walks out, tears in his eyes, and Marco comes home. He's got the paper with the headline that says "Senator and daughter killed," and
he looks very. That's actually like a very good like transition shot too, because he's like so forlorn and bummed out when he's walking into his house, and like they have it framed, so he's holding the headline like so that his wife sees it and is like, "Oh, this isn't good."
Yeah, well,
That's
he
not what
feels
says, but
guilty because
It's
he
all
let
my
him
fault.
go. He was going to stop him
Yeah,
before.
if you want to go by like real life, Marco would have been pulled off of this whole thing well before any of this happened because he just kept fucking up already. They wouldn't like they need to keep him involved because the movie needs it, but and the story needs it. But if it was real life, they'd be like, dude, you gave him an extra you were supposed to bring him in.
Yeah.
So, but yes, he has the newspaper. He's like, oh, Raymond killed the senator and his wife. And she's like, well, it doesn't say anything about it here. He's like, yeah, I know. I just know it's him.
Yeah. So then he gets a call. Yeah.
When I said his
Shaw
wife, I meant
him.
his wife, not the senator's wife. I just want to.
Right. So Shaw calls Marco, and you can see it's actually kind of a cool shot. He's like in a hotel room, and you can see Madison Square Garden across the street.
But one of the things I said about it, first of all, it's an effect shot, and it's really well done, like out the window. And then I was like, he got a hotel across the street from the Democratic National Convention that day. That's the most far-fetched part of this whole movie.
Different time.
Hey, they've got connections,
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so he's like, where are you? And he tells him where he is, and Marco, he's like, hand me those cards, and he goes.
And also a rag because my upper lip is very, very sweaty right now.
Iceland he's getting the vice president nomination, but Marco goes and he's like, okay, and he's got the whole deck of Queen of Diamonds, and then so once he pulls it, he's like, okay, what happened in Korea? And then he's like, oh wait, I remember, and he remembers killing everyone, and Marco says, why'd you do it? He says, I don't know. And he says, all right, no more solitaire for you.
He basically says, like, you're done. I'm deprogramming you. All those links and they're smashed and blah, blah, blah. And this whole scene is shot with Sinatra out of focus, which
is unintentional.
Which is unintentional, but like they went and redid it. But as we had stated earlier, Sinatra was like great on his first take and just kind of fell off every take after that. So they did several more takes and he said it didn't work. So we just put in the blurry version. And everybody thought I was this is Frankenheimer. It goes like, everybody thought I was a fucking genius because it kind of looks like the point of view shot of Sinatra talking to him. And he's like, so he looks, because he's messed up, so he looks out of focus. And I got so much praise for that creative choice. That was really because the assistant cameraman fouled up the shot.
Well, I guess that's like it's what you'd consider a happy accident, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, the Angel Lansbury calls him. She's like, get in the car. And Marco's like, oh, call me when you know what's going on. And he leaves. I kind of feel like, it's like, why wouldn't you just be like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, why don't you have someone tailing him or something?
Yeah, that was a little.
But movie.
Strange.
Movie,
right. That's the reason. The reason is movie. Yeah. So he goes to see Mom. She's got the Queen of Diamonds costume or whatever. She's not wearing it, but it's laying there.
That would have been
anyway,
something.
She lays out the whole what?
That would have been something. Another just totally different scene if that had been like that.
Hey, it would have played up on that whole incest thing.
Yeah.
You remember you were talking about the pate? I think maybe that's like American flag caviar.
Maybe
I think you're right.
Caviar.
You're right.
Yeah. That's a good. Yeah, that makes more sense. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't cake.
Yeah, he just kind of scoops. Yeah. He just kind of scoops it up. It definitely looks weird, and since it's not in color, we can't tell.
Right. Angela Lansbury lays out everything, the whole thing. She's behind it all. She is the puppet master. She is the little Bo Peep shepherding all this stuff along. And then she says, here's what you're going to do. Presidential nominee is going to give a speech. And she tells him specifically what line of the speech, and then you're going to kill him. And she's like, you're going to be dressed as a priest.
Was the speech written by the Russians or something like that?
She said it was worked on. It's the most she's like really playing it up. She says, the most rousing speech has been worked on here and in Russia.
Let's see.
Yeah, she added some stuff and whatever. Yeah, and then Johnny's gonna give a speech, and she's like, "Yes, this is the most."
Yeah, like when he dies, he'll pick him up in his arms and hand him off to someone, and then accept the nomination. I sort of feel like that the lead would be the dead presidential nominee, and no one would pay attention to the next thing.
This isn't ancient Rome, where you're just like, hey, the next guy.
He has been slain, therefore I shall be your emperor. Doesn't work.
But she was all like, this is
defending America, even if it means his own death.
I know. And Johnny's going to have blood all over himself. He's going to give this rousing speech and everything. Yeah. But really, she's the one that's going to be in control of everything, even when he becomes president. So, yeah, they show Shaw. He's got his case with the rifle in it. She specifically talked about, like, it's an easy rifle. It's, whatever.
He's dressed as a priest, too.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't got there yet. Sorry. You're still telling her.
Yeah.
No, she didn't say that. Yeah. It'd be easy for him to sneak out.
Trained sharpshooter as well. This is, like, perfect for him. He's never
well, the other thing with Angela Lansbury's character is that I can't remember what her name is. But she's talking about like how she's angry at them for choosing him as the assassin. She's like, I didn't know they were going to pick you to be the person I had to be the handler for,
Miss Eleanor Shaw Iceland.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, Shaw goes over, Raymond Shaw, and he takes there's like a booth that she told him to, to go to, and he gets in there. And meanwhile, Marco is pacing around. He's all angry. He's like, oh, we got to get over there. But he says, we got to get the hell out of here. That's
what him and Bob Hope go.
Yeah, and Bob Hope.
I like this whole scene with the because we did just have an election, but so we watched or I did at least like the conventions and stuff, and it's much the same, like in the same places in a way. And they had like some time to shoot in Madison Square Garden, so they got to shoot Shaw like kind of just like casually walking in and finding his way up kind of into the rafters where he's gonna be. And I just like, and like all the pomp and circumstance, like they're like flying the pictures of people and the American flags and the big banners and stuff. I just like really like this scene too.
But all the rooms that he walks through are all the same rooms later that Sinatra has to run through, which was an intentional choice by the director.
Well, yeah, first Sinatra's he's like, we got to stop this thing. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? We can't stop a whole convention, just because you said so. But he's looking up and he sees like sort of like a window where he is. And so Marco goes running. Yeah. And just like you said, like it's the same rooms, he's running towards it. And then Shaw has got his rifle out and he's got it aimed on the presidential nominee. And then he turns and shoots Johnny and his mother instead.
That shot of her getting shot where she gets like boom and then falls off the chair. That's great. That's a great dead fall.
Yeah, that is like really how I would imagine it would look. She kind of slumps down.
Yeah, it looks like it would have hurt if man.
Yeah.
well, shot in the head.
Good thing she was only 36.
Yeah, she can bounce back from that, no problem.
Yeah.
And it's just like to note there's a full-blown convention going on. People with signs, the delegates and all that, and people about to make speeches. And, they cut to like some stock footage of like a real convention from around that time or whatever, which I always think it's funny the way that signs look now versus like the ones that they would make like at a screen printing shop back then, But yeah, they're toast, those two.
Yeah, blew them right away. And then Marco comes in and he's stunned.
And Raymond puts his Medal of Valor or whatever.
Medal of Honor.
Yeah, Medal of Honor on
ill-gotten, but yeah.
But now he feels that it's deserved. He's like, I have now actually done something to save many people.
Yeah, and he turns to him. He says, "You couldn't have stopped them, so I did." And then he turns the gun on himself.
Yeah,
and we see Sinatra's face as he pulls the trigger. And
yes. Now I want to point out a big difference between the book and the movie is that Marco actually programmed him to kill them in the book, but they felt that they were like, that makes Sinatra's character look kind of like not a good guy, so let's not do that. I do think
this is way more dramatic because it's such a shock.
Yeah.
When you're like, oh, like, and then we go back. There's one final scene where Sinatra's at his place, and he's just like, poor friendless Raymond. I thought that was kind of a funny thing to say about this.
Yeah, it's like raining, and he's just staring out the window like, this used to be my playground. You know, he's just like all sad looking out the window, and then he reads from the compact history of the United States.
Here's
as many books.
Here's one of the things I wish they had done, since there was the weird scene on the train where it looked like she was going to be his handler. It would have been a fun twist, I think, if she said, honey, I understand. Why don't you sit down here and play some solitaire? And then
that would have been kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah, maybe she was, because it would give her character
something
purpose. I mean, let's face it.
Basically her role in the movie is to just pick him up when he gets out of jail, you know?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, what happened to Chen Jin or whatever? You don't see him anymore. After the fight, he's briefly in it, and then that's it. You never know what happened to him. So couple
he's gonna show up. He's gonna show up to cook the next day and be like, well, breakfast is getting cold. He's gonna wait around
where is he?
Lunch. Lunch is getting cold.
Wayne,
I wonder where he's gonna be.
Do you need a sandwich? So he's reading these. He says, "I'll read these citations," and he starts to read about like all these things that I'm kind of confused, I guess, at what he was reading at the end there, and then he talks about what a great guy Raymond was or whatever. I don't know, and then he just starts crying. Is that just?
They needed an ending.
I guess. What is he reading?
He's reading from one of his books, like a sort of a similar story about a patriotic thing that happened where the guy.
So it's not about this incident. It's just
no. It's a history. It's from the history of the United States.
I see.
And then he says he was wearing his medal when he died, and then he turns around, picks up the book, and he's trying to tell his wife that she should read one of these citations, and then 8 prisoners killing 4 enemy in the process, and blah 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 blah, and that's what he's talking about. He's just reading from the citation. So
I see, yes,
and it basically is talking about how this guy saved his platoon, but he like lost a leg in the in the incident. So.
Yeah, I mean, similar. It is. Yeah. Well, it's similar because, I mean, they told the story that Raymond Shaw had saved his whole platoon, but that was just the cover up. But he did save.
But he did save
a lot of people, like you said.
Country from general sort of uprest
from communists
or whatever.
Yeah.
From the real
communist tart.
Yeah, she's the communist tart.
Yeah.
All along.
Well, it's kind of funny because when you watch reviews and stuff, I watched a couple of YouTube things, like one YouTube thing, and I read some stuff online where they're like, oh, the big reveal or whatever. I was like, oh, I mean, I was pretty sure Angela Lansbury was like the main bad guy the whole time, but
you're pretty sure that Senator Palpatine was also Emperor Palpatine?
Wait a minute, what?
The big reveal. Exactly. This is exactly what we talked about. Go listen to our last episode. But I mean, maybe that was just because I knew from the way the story was going that like, it seems like she's definitely got something to do rather than just be like Johnny's, like, you know, like she was definitely working, I guess. Yeah. Right. But whatever. I mean, it is very cool. It's very interesting how they combine the political intrigue with like psychological sort of drama, kind of the brainwashing and all that and all that. So I feel like it starts a little bit, not slow, but it takes a little while, but the tension really just builds throughout the whole movie. You know, you got to start somewhere, I guess, in order to get
slow
to where
burn.
you need to be at the end. Yeah, slow burn. Yeah.
Despite that, I do find it very rewatchable, though, as I have watched it 3 times in the past month. So.
Oh wow! That's very
seen
good.
It twice in the last year, so.
Oh boy!
Very well.
This is the first time I've ever watched it.
So you've watched it once in the last week.
I watched it one time. That's right. We also kind of, it's fun, not fun, but it's interesting to sort of think back on the Cold War, right? Like it was a different time.
Oh, definitely.
But it was also like, we were very scared of communists back then. I mean, America, not we weren't born, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we were still alive in the tail end of the Cold War.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I had
But
that Red Dawn scare of the communists for sure. We're not, you know, watching G.I. Joe and everything and watching Red Dawn. Like, I was not scared of the communists, but I was always kind of hoping that I could go in the woods and like piss on a radiator someday. You know what I mean? Wearing snow jobs outfits.
Could still happen.
Sure.
And
might,
Don't give up your dream.
But yeah, I mean, this whole communism was just a red herring, but no, it wasn't. Like, people were very scared of it. So yeah, this is they did a good job here.
Yes, it was very good. Let's get to our final thoughts.
What would
Thurston, you go first. Oh God, Clay, you go first. Everybody go first at the same time.
I'll talk at the same time.
I'll
I thought that all the performances were. Oh, sorry. All right.
I'll go first because I think maybe this was my suggestion in a way. So, and I've been trying to steer you guys to watching some war movies, and it didn't seem like you were that interested in doing that. But
don't point the finger at me. It was the commander.
Well, I never said I didn't want to watch it.
I watched that war movie that you wanted to watch on my own.
I mean, that's fine. I
twice.
But like you kind of like, but in tandem to you, John, like having us watch like some of these old Cary Grant movies and black and white movies and things like that. I was like, well, there's so many awesome like old World War II movies, and this isn't exactly that. It's more of a Cold War movie, as you said, but just kind of like that intrigue about the Cold War, and that this was like a psychological thriller, and it's got Frank Sinatra in it. It's just pretty great. And I only wanted to watch this because it's kind of one of those things that people talk about, and then they made the remake, which we're going to do over and contrast.
That's right.
But yeah, as far as like psychological dramas that aren't really this isn't a Hitchcock movie, it's a different one, and it's more like kind of military based, just kind of struck me as like being a really cool movie to watch. And I kind of disagree with you. I think the first half hour of the movie is where I feel like the momentum starts there, but also that's like a great piece of film that really makes me want to get to the end of it. Like, at no point in this movie was I confused or didn't want to know what was going to happen. Not confused, but like didn't want to know what was happening next. Like, wanted to know what was happening next. Following it, even watching it the second time, knowing what's going to happen, I was like, oh yeah. Oh, and then this part's coming up, and this.
Well, the nice thing about multiple rewatches is you pick up on a lot of stuff that you didn't notice the first couple of times.
And then reading up some facts. I didn't do any of that the last time. I reading up the trivia and whatever for it. But yeah, I'm gonna straight up give this an A+. I love this movie. It's great. We'll see how we can and contrast. But I love this movie, and I don't have much else to say. Great actors, great cinematography. This is Frank, who's the director?
Frankenheimer.
Frankenheimer.
Yeah. Frankenheimer.
Yeah.
He's done other stuff we know, right? But
he did the De Niro movie Ronin.
Yeah.
Oh, which is also another kind of movie that's exactly in my sort of wheelhouse. It's that's almost like a Michael Mann movie. Yeah, it's like a Michael Mann type movie, which I really enjoy. So A+, that's it for me. Thanks. Bye. Claim first.
All right. Sorry, Nish.
All right. Do you want me to go then?
Yeah, sure. I like my wrap-ups here are always really short. So.
All right. Well, then I'll say all the things that you're going to say. And
yeah, do that fun. So that I won't have anything.
I actually had kind of the opposite, though, experience, I think, of you guys, because I kind of watched it over a couple of days. I didn't really have a lot of time to rewatch it, for sure. I mean, I definitely will. It's way more, not way more. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't know what to expect. I literally had no idea what this movie was
I
about.
really thought it was going to be about an election in Manchuria. You know?
Well, I didn't know there was this brainwashing component to it. I mean, I did think it was a political thriller kind of thing, obviously, but it's very cool. Like we said at the beginning, I think the performances are great. And I'm glad I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I didn't mean to say it starts slow, but I mean, it builds. Like at the beginning when you're kind of like, wait, what are these guys? What are they talking about? Like, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, by the time he shoots Jocelyn, I was like, I was blown away. That was very compelling.
Much like Jocelyn was blown away.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect that. Especially like in the 60s, this sort of like just shooting a woman in the head was not something that I don't think happened very often. So it almost would have been bad enough if he just walked out and left her there like crying over her father or something like that. But blowing her away was just like,
Yeah. That was a gut
terrible
punch.
Yeah, a real gut punch. But anyway, yeah, John Frankenheimer, excellent direction and great performances. I'll give this an A.
There you go.
There we go.
All right.
There we go.
I thought I was giving him an A. I can't decide between an A or an A+, so it'll be somewhere in there. I think this movie is fantastic. Here's a knowledge drop I forgot to give earlier. Frank Sinatra had suggested Lucille Ball for the part that Angela Lansbury ultimately got. John Frankenheimer was like, okay, I'll listen to that suggestion. You're a producer, but let me show you this performance of Angela Lansbury. He showed him one of his other films, and he was like, yeah, no, let's go with her. So
he showed him 1986's Murder, She Wrote, like one of the better episodes.
Yeah, they went into the future and said, now check out this one with Tom Bosley and that guy that fights the Doomsday Machine in Star Trek. I think you'll love it. It was really a sensational performance. So
anyway.
you
know a lot about Murder, She Wrote. I didn't know anything.
He's like, what's Star Trek? That hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah, well, neither. That's the beauty of this time machine that he got. So anyway, A+. The performances are great. We didn't even mention a lot of the shots where there's like a head right in front of the camera that's slightly out of focus and someone's sort of standing off behind. There's a lot of that in this movie. It's very effective. It's playing on McCarthyisms and Cold War paranoia. It's still a relevant film.
Oh yes.
Yes. Like we said, we try not to get into any of that because everybody gets into that. So we'll be different.
Right.
Anyway,
all the fats out there are getting into that.
So that's it. I got just like great performances, great cinematography, just a great film overall. The other thing was that this movie fell into like the copyright expired and Sinatra bought it up and then waited a few years and then re-released it in the late 80s, I guess. And it was a hit all over again.
Crazy.
So,
how about
that? There you go. A or A+. I don't know, but I liked it regardless.
I mean,
it's like really, that's just
great.
splitting hairs at that point.
Well, is that my cat or your cat?
It's not my cat. Like that, my cat got tossed. Not literally tossed, but I escorted her out of the room.
We don't have a cat yet.
But maybe in spirit that you have a cat.
Your future cat is like watching.
Future cat has taken John Frankenheimer's time machine and traveled from the future to now to come in and meow in the background.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Listen,
it's like watching
even more now.
Yeah.
Jeez. I thought letting her in would quiet her.
We're gonna raise that cat right on Star Trek. I tell you that.
Oh, good man. Meow meow meow! I want to be on the podcast.
Not Section 31, though. Certainly not.
Sheesh. All right, that's Manchurian Candidate, 1962. Go forward in time, just like John Frankenheimer, and listen to our Manchurian Candidate 2004 episode, which will be forthcoming.
And contrast.
And contrast.
It'll be interesting.
Hashtag and contrast.
It'd be interesting, I think, more than like story elements or something. Literally, the direction, the making of the movie will be interesting to see how different it is.
Yeah.
Just movies were different back in the
I saw
60s,
like Roger Ebert reviewed briefly both of them and was sort of like Manchurian Candidate 62 is kind of like a political thriller, whereas the 2004 one was sort of more of like a fuck, I can't remember what he said. Something like, cut this part out because I just fucked that all up.
That was
Actually,
great.
Leave it because it's so fucking insightful on my part.
Well, we're gonna need to and contrast, and if we talk about in contrast like predictions, because none of us have seen it, right?
Correct.
I know.
So, like, just think about that, like, twist at the end, much like Thomas Crown Affair. Like, how do they make it different at the very end? Like the money shot at the end when Shaw shoots himself and shoots his mom and shoots his mom's husband. Like, how do they deal with that major very end of the movie plot thing?
We'll wait and see, and we'll contrast. Meanwhile, while you're waiting for that, you can listen to all of our other episodes and podcasts. You can watch our videos on YouTube. Just search for League Podcast or go to LeaguePodcast.com. But otherwise, if you're on socials, just search for League Podcasts. You'll find us. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a review and a thumbs up and all those things that people do.
Yeah, do all that stuff. And while you're at it, go to viz.com and sign up, and you can read weekly cartoon comic strips that I work on. So check out Ichi. I was Ichi
and Scratchy.
Ichi the Witch. And what else am I working on? Blue Exorcist. And there's other ones. There's like a lot. I can't remember them all offhand. I couldn't remember what Roger Ebert said. I can't remember what I'm doing. So time to call it quits.
You're a busy man.
Yeah, God's a busy man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening.
I like watching. There's like a couple of clips. Maybe it was like Revenge of the Sith or whatever, when Siskel and Ebert like are violently disagreeing and they're being really cunty with each other on the set. It's really funny. You can just like look up the like Siskel and Ebert fighting on YouTube. So while you're on YouTube subscribing to our channel,
you might as well check out Siskel and Ebert yelling at each other.
They are funny. And
you should check out before they became famous and they were just a local show, and like Gene Siskel's got this huge ass like fucking weird mustache thing going on. He looks like he should be in a barbershop quartet. Yeah, it's a very Gene Shalit-esque mustache.
Man, different time.
Indeed.
All right, and don't forget, if you're in the area, check out Clay Inferno's Variety Hour coming up in a couple weeks at the Arts Armory. It's all on our social media and Clay's social media. So
Sunday, the February the 16th, the
perfect capper for Valentine's weekend.
That's right. There's going to be girls taking their clothes off. It's burlesque.
Whoa,
that's right. Be much like like Josie. And see people in their bras.
There'll be snake bites and people tying them up with their shirts. Oh, well.
A burlesque version of the Manchurian Candidate. It's going to be a big hit.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, Stacy's playing my mom.
Oh, all right.
Hey.
All right, well, thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good one. We'll talk to you later.
Adios.
Later, you fucks.
A nation of television viewers into hysteria to sweep us up into the White House with powers that will make martial law seem like anarchy.